Okay, we have altogether 6 panelists and myself serving as a chair. And of course, we expect the audience to participate as much as possible because I think the more we learn from you, the more enlightening this will be. Okay? So let me start by giving some preamble on these topics. And then I would pass to my panelists, first to introduce themselves, and then to comment on the question that may come up. So we are talking about technological change, and I think the term change has been something that we are used to. In fact, change is the way of life of this world, you know. We have undergone change for a long time, but very slowly. Since when we start by changing from agriculture to industrial to digital era, change has been there, but it moved very slowly that we don't feel. Okay, so sometimes we call the change evolution, and if the change is very drastic, that cause the change of our lifestyle, sometimes we call revolutions. Okay, but during those change, I think the disruption is always there, except that the disruption is very slow, and in one generation they don't feel so much difference. Okay, it's unlike today. You know, I think they talk about we are living in a very exciting world. We have witnessed so many changes. We have, I think, at least in my time, when I study, I used the slide rule. I think some of you also do that. We don't have calculators, okay? And suddenly slide rule disappear. Even calculator today disappear, and we just use our mobile, okay? So with that, you know, all this has been driven today by the computing power, and I think the change is very rapid, and the growth is called exponential. I think all of you familiar with this. It's not only disruptive, but it's also increased very rapidly. So, which means that maybe we have to adapt. You know, a lot of things change in this world, which is beyond our control. For example, climate change is one of them. Population boom, urbanization, you know, all this perhaps with our advanced technology, perhaps we look forward to use technology to solve those problems. But again, the technology itself, I think people feel threatened because with the computing power, we are talking about AI, artificial intelligence, you know, and of course the definition of artificial intelligence could be different from one to another. You know, many people think of artificial intelligence simply as a pattern recognition, optimization based on big data that we available. But others think of even have their own consciousness, okay, which is only life form that I mean all the life form have some kind of consciousness. They try to protect themselves. They know that this is me and you are you, and they try to protect themselves as much as possible. But the question is whether the machine, AI, robots, would they have this kind of consciousness? Could we build into them? You know, that is already a very big question. And by that time, if they have this consciousness, it could be very dangerous. This was Stephen Hawking, the very famous scientist, say we better have our goal align with the AI. Okay, but I think recently I think you may heard about Kylie Fu, the very famous Taiwanese scientist in AI. He simply said that it's not possible today to have, for the robot to have this kind of consciousness. So what it does is that it just follow the rules. So it's up to us to build in the rules, and they will follow as much as possible. Okay. So now they come to these panels. I was given a kind of questions. Since AI, even though they don't have consciousnness, but we know that they are more productive. They think faster. They have more computing power. They work 24 hours a day. They don't have family. They are not sick, you know. So basically, many jobs could be done by AI, you know, more efficiently, more economically, and therefore, most of the jobs that we have today may disappear. Now the question is that you as a business leader, you know, how could you solve this problem? Because if the job is lost, it means that you cannot provide, you know, salary to your staff. You have to perhaps lay them off, because if the machine does a better job than your staff, it's very difficult for you to just keep them. Of course, some companies still trying to keep them as much as possible. But eventually, I think all the production will be done by machine. So this is the first question. How are you going to resolve this problem? And the second one, I think, is that how all these corporates, big corporates, work together, trying to direct the development of AI so that it will benefit mankind. Okay, so this is something that we should discuss here. And with that, I would just pass on. I would start from the far right. Sorry, we would call by the first name, right? So I would call Stacy instead of Kenworth. Yep. Okay, please introduce yourself, and then perhaps you can provide your opinions about what we discussed. Thank you.
Sure. So bigger job as I run essentially is Can you put on your yeah. So my name is Stacy Kenworthy. I'm the chairman and CEO of a company called Hellastorm, which is one company in a portfolio of quite a few companies. My bigger job is I actually am the chairman of that self-funded R&D organization, where essentially we do original technology research, develop IP, and then when we develop something we think is interesting, we wrap a company around it and create entities that we eventually spin out. So then we sell those, and that creates typically the resources to be able to keep the R&D machine going. So this will be a topic that I'm very, very interested in. In terms of my opinion on AI, I would tend to agree with the chairman that a true consciousness is not currently possible. I also believe that it may ultimately be possible. As far as jobs, I think a lot of jobs are going to simply be eliminated. I think that's. Sorry. I think that's going to cause a lot of inequality in the world. In other words, I think it's going to be a technology disruptor that making it better for mankind doesn't necessarily it's going to be better for all mankind. I don't have a solution to that, except that technology also tends to create the means to solve the problems that it also creates. So it may be that the jobs become so efficient that there's so many excess resources that we can simply provide for everybody, whether they're working or not. I don't know if that's going to happen, but I'm cautiously optimistic.
Thank you. Well, there's a book or two books by Mr. Harari. I think you may have. You are Noah Harari, Homo sapien and Homo Deus. He was saying that eventually there will be two classes for the population of the world. The super elite class would be the one who control AI. Of course, you don't need so many people to do that. So this constitutes a small percentage, maybe 10%. And the other 90% is not working class anymore. It's called useless class, because it will not be useful both economically and also even militarily, because at that time, you are not going to use the soldier to fight like before. So this is something that is alarming. Anyway, thank you for your comments. We move to Ivan. Ivan, I think you can please introduce yourself first, yeah, and then.
Okay, cool. Hi everybody, my name is Ivan Goh. I'm from Singapore. I am a co-founder of a cybersecurity startup. I think we are the first cybersecurity startup with a Singaporean and Israeli co-founding team. I think, I could be wrong. So we've been in the market for about 4 years. For the first 2.5 years, we were very focused on services contracts with militaries, government agencies around the region. Things that you see on movies, you watch on movies, we do it for real. We call it offense technologies for surveillance, or in the name of national security. Back in 2017, we did well in terms of revenue. We bootstrapped, we reinvested everything into R&D, and we launched as a product startup in February this year. Okay. Why all this comes into play? Because actually when we decide on our vision for the product, and cybersecurity space is an extremely crowded space. To differentiate yourself in technologies is not easy, yeah? Because the enterprise customers have met so many vendors globally, you really need to be different from everyone else. One of the biggest change that we saw that is about to come, and all of us is going to experience this, is 5G. From a networking perspective, 5G is going to change a lot of things for us. It really is going to change a lot of things in the way that we communicate. This whole AI stuff, to be honest, I was a student of AI many years ago, and we used to do expert systems. I'm not sure if you guys know what it is. Back in those days, it's on-premise systems because there's a lack of cloud connectivity. Today, why is everybody talking about machine learning, deep learning, AI, and you were saying that Arnold Schwarzenegger is going to come out and take over the world? All this is because of cloud connectivity, right? And a big part of what we do is essentially to redefine what our customers are comfortable and familiar with network technologies today from a security perspective, and deliver everything from the endpoint. So the software that we provide our customers allows them to have traditional networking capabilities on the endpoint anywhere you are globally, as long as you are in the cloud. So that's a part of what we do. Prior to FNOS, prior to this torturous journey, I used to work in enterprise software companies, SAP. One of my colleagues is actually a moderator here as well. SAP, Akamai, Alcatel-Lucent. So I've been there for 15 years. Coincidentally spent 15 years in Indonesia, lived in Jakarta for 4. One of the uniqueness in our startup, it's unlike all the Israeli cyber startups, we're focused in Asia as the first port of call. All Israeli guys would go to US, by the way. The VCs will want them to be in US. We are focused in Asia. So that's too much about me, right? I'm sorry. And I have a whole bunch of points here, and I hope we'll talk about it later. But essentially, to add on to Stacy's point, yes, I don't think full consciousness is going to be available anytime soon. If you think a robot is going to have the intention to strike you or have any malicious intention against human beings, absolutely that is possible. Only if the initial rule sets say so. If the initial rule sets says that there is a possibility that this may happen because of the branches of the outcome and the leaves, it will happen, okay? But it wasn't because if it didn't exist in the first place, Arnold Schwarzenegger is not going to come and hunt you down, okay? So that's my view from a computer science student perspective. Thank you.
We are able to learn something and get the confirmation that consciousness, is not easy, but it's going to come, right? You think that it's going to come? Okay. Yeah. Well, next we have Stacy. Sorry, Debbie. Debbie Lee, please.
Thank you, Dr. Warsack, and I'm pleased to join such a prestigious, esteemed panel of speakers here at Horasis. It's the first time for me, and my name is Debbie. I'm the founder and a technopreneur. I live in Singapore. I work out Singapore, but I traveled to more than 30 cities around the world, having done business in more than 10 countries before. So I was a corporate international business executive before I came out and became an entrepreneur and took the dark side and jumped in the deep waters with sharks. So my company, TechStorm, is a startup. We position ourselves as a tech media company. So what we do is we are the intersection of media and technology, no dissimilar to what you get from fintech, which is finance technology. So we are media technology. So TechStorm will be the world's first tech and entrepreneurship media destination that is meant to empower the mass market, the man on the street, with stories and developments of what is happening at the innovation side, and developments and technologies, and the people who have invented and the entrepreneurs behind them. So that's our mission. We're going live in 2019, so 2019 will be a big year for us. So a little bit on what I do. I see myself as a media futurist. I'm a technopreneur. I'm a huge proponent of technology and how it has disrupted our life, our businesses, and generations to come. So I think, first of all, I first define disruption as something that needs to displace something. For it to be disruptive, it has to change what is status quo. It has to change what it is right now and what is current, with ability to create something new, and with a new value chain, with a new service chain, and a new outcomes. And having been a technopreneur myself, I believe that technology has the ability to be able to create new economies and new models around that businesses can build on top of that. And I'm happy to kind of share more. And just to take on a little bit on what Dr. Warsack has said, I'm a little bit of a sci-fi fan, so whatever I'm going to be saying on that is going to be tainted with sci-fi, so forgive me if that's sounding a little bit out of the world. So obviously, just to pick up what was said by, I think, the panelists earlier, is that we've seen enough of Westworld, we've seen enough of Skynet. I think we have already seen that, and that is already happening. I think that might be a negative outcome of what's to come. But don't forget, technology also has a positive impact on society, a positive impact on jobs, positive impact on economies, and positive impact on the quality of lives. So it's a matter of how we steer that. And who are the guardians of that? Who's going to be the guardians of when the line is going to be drawn? When AI is going to be given a sentient being? Who is going to stop that? Who's going to code that? How are we going to actually command that with syntaxes so that the AI will not override a rule to kill humans, right? So I mean, that's just swinging the conversation a little bit off, and I will just move on to the next panelist to continue more.
Thank you, Debbie. Let's move to Anand.
Thank you. It's an honor for me to being here with all of you. I'm Yusuf Adnan from Indonesia. I'm CEO of BIOS Indonesia. What we do in Indonesia is we provide enterprise resource planning module, and also we have hardware. It's a solar cell charge controller. We built ourselves, so it's a local one. Straight to the topic, what we discussed today is very interesting because technology is like two-sided knife. We can take the positivity and also we can take the negativity of the technology. If we talk about AI, definitely in my opinion, we cannot stop the development. But surely as a human, we have to be committed to the humanity. I mean, technology for the very first time is developed by a human also. So that's why AI have to be developed, but the government and also the business leaders here has to be collaborative, has to be make a great collaboration and bring a commit to the humanity, to the inclusiveness. It's like a man and woman getting married. I cannot today I married and tomorrow I say to my wife, okay, I don't want to be marry you. We cannot say it like that. It's like a commitment. We have a moral obligation to the humanity. I mean the technology expertise here. Thank you.
Thank you. Let's move to Prasoon Akawa.
Hi, my name is Prasoon and I'm co-founder of First Ride Singapore and Dr. Wheels Bangalore. Dr. Wheels is a doorstep car service company. I've worked with one of the most successful startups in India, like Redbus and IndiaMart, with about 15 years of experience in technology, building products, and I'm passionate about improving performance of people, systems, and processes. So, getting to the first question which is, how do leaders leverage these technologies? So, not everybody is so tech savvy, and the biggest query they have is, we don't have time. So today we have enough AI to automate most of the leadership, which is a regular management task. Second is free themselves from these routine tasks and focus on new upcoming technologies and building their policies and their transformation towards leading to those technologies. Second option could be that they can co-invest and co-create with other companies who are in early stage and who are building such technologies, leverage that and go ahead. The third option could be that they can foster entrepreneurship within their company, which is also corporate innovation, because they already have all the resources which are required to use such technologies. Today, customer is not just asking for one thing. They're looking for a better solution. They want us to be loyal from day one rather than they being loyal to us, which is very, very interesting today. And also at the same point of time, they want us to be cheaper than ever before. They want us to be faster. So how do we do all of that? There's only one way, that we leverage all these technologies and reduce our cost at all the ends. So we can use a couple of technologies right away, like we can use blockchain to build trust. Like I've seen a lot of casino games using blockchain and getting away with the thought process that I've been cheated with those prizes. The second option could be robotic process automation. A lot of companies in manufacturing and packaging use robotic process automation. Like right now, even in pharma and life sciences, we use it a lot. Then we can use AR and VR. We have seen a lot of examples in real estate where you can see the property even before you have gone there. We have seen a lot of examples in India and abroad. And these are the ways we can leverage these technologies. Coming to the second question, which is, how do we collaborate? Like every one of us is talking about that we should do something wherein the whole of Asia can collaborate together. So I would like to propose something called as Asia Stack. This could be a technology platform which will be on a blockchain and wherein governments and businesses across Asia can interact on it. So few examples for it would be, let's say the government wants some FDI, FTAs or IPAs or any kind of agreements for that matter. So they can write from putting up the first initial request, then discussions on it, and then the final agreements, which could be on smart contracts, could be done on this platform. Second would be co-creating some technology, maybe for the smart cities, maybe for the educational system. So for that, bits and pieces can be prepared at different locations, and it could be on a collaborative platform, something like GitHub, and all participants from different countries within Asia can participate, and once some customization is required, they can fork from it and build their own custom version for their localized version. The third the third thing which we have is that we can have a platform which would be again on blockchain, and it could do all kinds of digital transactions within these businesses and countries, reducing all the delays and the stuff we face today. So recently one of the transactions was done in India on blockchain by one of the biggest companies in India, and it was done within 2 days instead of typically 15 days. So that's a great example how digital platforms can help us. That's all. Thank you.
You mentioned that perhaps you are going to use the platform and offer to all the government to use and cooperate. You think at that level, would they understand this kind of technology?
Governments are understanding that we have to embrace technology. We cannot escape from it, although there is a risk of failure, but we have the first mover advantage. If Asia is the one wherein we collaborate together, I think we can skip the risk of failure and look towards embracing it.
I think I heard that many governments are quite afraid of blockchain.
Probably they are afraid of bitcoins because it has a lot of legal issues. But even the transaction what I talked about on blockchain, it was not Bitcoin. The transaction was done.
No, I understand. They were afraid of being too transparent and
so today,
too fair and too transparent.
So today, the security at blockchain can be broken only with quantum computing, which is still not there. And even for that, we have cryptography, which can not be broken by quantum computer as well. So yeah, we can make them believe that.
I wish that all the election in the future will be based on the blockchain.
Yeah, in fact, a lot of countries are actually working on it on the backgrounds. It's just that we are not sharing it right now.
Okay, I think we move to Maria. Please introduce yourself.
Hello, my name is Marie Taddy Brett. I'm the CMO for Gate Technology. Gate Technology is a blockchain company, and we own Gate.io, which is one of the oldest cryptocurrency exchanges. We've been around since 2013. We recently also launched Wallet.io, which is a wallet to enable our users to also keep their funds securely. I think it was really interesting when you talked about the useless class. If we're talking just about pure economic efficiency, is there really any useless class? Because obviously we will always need a part of the population, a large part of the population for consumption, because all of these larger companies need to be able to sell to a large part of the population. So I don't think there's ever going to really be a useless class. And I think, like Debbie said, technology is really about disruption, and whatever is going to be replaced is probably for the best, because we're going to find a more efficient way to be able to better serve the government, the people, the market, and we will be able to find a way to provide people with at least funds to be able to keep on funding their life, because bigger companies need it to be able to exist. So in general, as a cryptocurrency exchange, we have a lot of different companies who approach us to be listed on our platform. And so I've seen a lot of brilliant projects be pitched to our company. And I feel confident that a lot of great technologists are working on solutions to be able to bring more transparency, more efficiency to the world. And I think one of the big things that we were talking about was transparency, and through blockchain technology we'll be able to bring more transparency, maybe taxation in a more efficient way, maybe consumption in a more efficient way. And so as a result from that, I think AI and blockchain technology will probably work hand in hand to be able to push us towards a better future. Thank you.
We have one more, right? June, please.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Good afternoon to everyone. You know, when Frank told me about the topic of our panel, which is disruption and aggregation, that's a very huge topic. And I would like to contextualize that from the Western and Asian perspective. I've been in the IT industry doing software development for the past 30 years. I was with Fujitsu and one of the biggest companies in the Philippines, which is the Ayala Group. And definitely the Western world is totally different from what is in Asia. Maybe a good example would be the case of Uber and how Grab actually dominated the market. Of course, there's that issue about SoftBank and so on. But just to cite an example, that solutions in Asia is very much different from what works in the Western world, whether it's from North America or from Europe. I would like to say that because we are in Horasis Asia, and definitely we want solutions that will fit and that will work in Asia. Specifically, I recently worked with a digital platform. It's like the Uber for shipping. This digital platform is basically a global logistics platform that allows you to export or import containerized shipments anywhere around the world, and it's fully integrated. Now, we have some partners from Israel, but you know, when they saw this solution, they were amazed, and we were able to launch it, in fact, in Singapore during the recent FinTech event in Singapore this month. And this is a solution that is tailored for the Asian market. And let me just say that the big difference. The big difference, based on my experience, is that for the Asian market, whether it's Vietnam, the Philippines, Cambodia, Laos, or any other Thailand, and so on, most of the businesses that we have here in Asia are not fully automated. Most of the businesses that we have clients that are like, you know, in the hundreds of millions or even probably billions of revenue, but they are not fully automated. And that's why it's very difficult to implement a system that works really well in the United States, in Europe, but very difficult to implement it in Asia. Because the reality in Asia is that most systems are not yet in place, even the basics, for a lot of companies. So having said that, that's why I was really thinking a lot how to participate in the topic, like, you know, disruption and aggregation, because from the Asian context, it's really very different. But having said that, and going to the question of AI, yeah, definitely AI is very interesting, but then again, if you put that into the Asian context, we're very far behind, I would say, because the foundation of AI is data, right? And the problem with most companies and even most governments, our data are not exactly clean. The integrity of the data that we have is a big issue. So if we have a big issue on data integrity, both in the public and the private sector, then how can we apply AI? We're really very far behind. And I'm saying this based on my actual experience working with, you know, the different parties in the public and the private sector. That's a reality in Asia. So again, that's why I won't even venture and say what is the potential impact of AI in the Asian context. That's a very difficult question. And I would like to focus my attention first on building solid digital platforms and software that will promote data integrity, data availability, data security, and so on. Whether we use blockchain or a typical database management system running on the cloud and so on, I think we need to address the basics from the Asian context of creating a clean, reliable, highly available data. So that's all, Mr. Chair.
You talk about this data. They compare data to oil in the past. Data today is the most important asset of the world, and China claimed to be the Saudi Arabia of data. So the reason is that without data to train the machine, it would not be able to behave, the intelligently. Now I think many big corporations today, Amazon, Google, Alibaba, Baidu, they all collect data, and when we buy things from Amazon, our behavior, our data has been kept, and I think in China, perhaps I heard that they collect a lot of data of everybody, the biometric data of all the citizens are kept by the government. But I think this is an issue, but not many people understand about it. I think it's good that you tell us.
If I may add, Mr. Chair, I've heard our colleague mention about robotics process automation, RPA. I had a chance to evaluate one of the leading RPA solutions. When you look at it and study it, it's really too elementary to really make a good sense and a very good use case and application of it. Maybe I would even say that it is at the stage wherein our colleague Go was saying about expert systems, wherein you have rules-based and so on. There is no sophistication from what I have seen based on that RPA solution that we took a look at, and it's being used in Korea by one of the largest technology consulting companies. But still, when you look at it, it's not really that impressive. So I think that's why I think we're really a long way to go as far as AI and all of these things are concerned.
Any viewpoint from the audience on what we have discussed, please?
This is Mark Müller-Eberstein from Seattle. I have a question for Marie. You mentioned earlier you have a lot of innovative companies coming to your platform. Is there a difference by geography where you see the innovation are coming from? Is it different regions, different countries that are more active than others? Thank you.
Really good question. I've seen a lot of interesting projects come out of Asia, definitely out of China where we're based, and I've seen also from Europe as well. North America for us is a little more difficult because we're not currently open to the US, but to US citizens, but so we don't usually look for technology coming out of there. However, I know there have been a lot of interesting projects. I think Asia, though, is where people are really trying to leverage mobile and all of that kind of stuff.
Any more comments from the audience before we go for second round? Okay, thank you. I think that all of us must have been asked many times by people around us, what should they prepare for the futures when the future is still unknown, because of this change that is going through very fast. If they can prepare now, what would you advise them so that they would not lose their job, or they would be able to follow the technology and become perhaps super elites or something like that? Well, what can perhaps each one of us try to address on this point? What should we advise if we were asked, how would they prepare for the futures?
Sure. So I think we discussed this in a topic a little bit earlier, but I think the key is to focus people's efforts on learning strongly the fundamentals and then learning how to learn and committing to learning being a lifelong process. I think you need to get people to expect that whatever their job is now is either going to go away or change radically in the future, and they're going to need to reskill and retrain and learn new things in order to be able to stay employed. So whatever they're in now, it's probably, it's going to be different later, and they need to be prepared to adjust, and they need the underlying skill in learning and adaptability to be able to handle that. I think that's going to be more important than any other thing they can do to prepare.
Yeah. So, and again, I think I will be biased when I give my response, because I'm in technology, right? I can't be a banker anymore. So this is the same advice I gave to my nephew as well. I think that technology, it's going to be the key skill for not just to excel, but essentially to survive in the next era. If you look at today's disruptions, hardly can you find a disruption that is without technology in there. All right. As a kid, if you want to tell the kids, and I see this firsthand with my nephew actually, I push them to get into coding as young as they can. Kids, they will love it, but trust me, when they get to 7, 8, 9 years old, they might lose interest in stuff. Doesn't matter. We're not expecting them to become expert coders. In fact, I haven't, written a line of code for a very long time. The to Stacey's point, fundamentals, right? Fundamentals is for us to excel as a technology startup, you have to understand technology and not just the marketing message of technologies, yeah? You got to understand really the underlying stuff that makes it work. And this is actually, I think to Jun's point as well, we're so far behind from Western economies. One of the biggest challenge is our engineering talents. We have very high level, superficial understanding of actual engineering works as compared to our Western counterparts, unfortunately. This is something that I think we definitely have to try to come up with programs and get collectively across the region to do better. I've seen good people in North Asia. South is actually, I think we are struggling, to be honest. Now, I also, adding on that, I really envy the kids today. No, I'm still young as well, by the way. I really envy the kids because every one of them is leaning towards entrepreneurship, right? Versus getting a stable job or no offense to the rest of you guys who have worked 20 years. But because the whole economy is providing them with so much opportunities, right? You get all this publicity, and Debbie's going to do it next year. All the successful fundings and stuff like this, all the stories. Kids get excited about stuff like this. He did it, I'm going to do it as well. But I also pity them because they lack of the actual knowledge of running a business. I have a good idea. I solve something, potentially a sexy way of solving a problem. It doesn't translate to a sustainable business, okay? And this is one of the biggest challenge I've seen with most of the younger startups, especially in consumer and retail space. Not so much in enterprise space, because enterprise startups are usually old dudes who's been around for a long time. Cash flow, revenues, those are the things that matter to us, market capitalizations, valuations, etc., right? So, I would say fundamentally we need to build engineering skills. Along the way, get them acquainted with how they actually build sustainable companies, exits, stuff like this. For example, if you do business courses in Western economies, you actually thought a lot about exits and stuff. Whereas in Asia, when you go attend talks and stuff, you talk a lot about how you get funding. There isn't much, talks about actual exits, market benchmark, peer benchmarking on M&A up. So most startups will say, I want to get acquired, maybe by Facebook or everyone else, right? But do they know the corp dev guys in those companies? Do they know the whole process of getting, on the table to be acquired? Do they know their valuations? Do they know how to get there? Most of them don't. So this is the challenge that I've seen here, and just addressing that. Okay.
Let me ask you a question. Does the world really need a lot of programmers or a lot of entrepreneurs? Because we have also the other side, the social side, the humankind side, where who is going to solve the problem of climate change, who is going to change the problem of rapid urbanization, the aging society, and so on. And of course, the impact of our technology is there. So if everybody are builder, who is going to be the users?
Very good question. Now, as I said, I mean, fundamentally, I think the technology is a core skill set that you should have to understand. Doesn't mean you have to be expert coder, doesn't mean you have to be a builder. You could eventually end up as the consumer of that technologies that you are very familiar with. In your point, how business leaders can leverage technologies to achieve goals and stuff, right? And I'm crossing the point. As a business leader, we are constantly, as an entrepreneur, we are constantly pushed to adopt new technologies for companies at whatever expense. Unfortunately, we don't have unlimited budgets to do that, right? So we have to decide what is the best technology for that single dollar that I have to spend. The only way I can decide on that is if, one, you have a great team that tells you the answer, or you yourself understand a big part of it. So it comes back to the point where coding is the fundamental blocks of understanding technologies. That's my point. But I'm not expecting all of us to become coders. Please don't do that.
I'm going to take this on a slightly different level. I think because being an entrepreneur is always about numbers. If you look at the economics of it, economics of the digital economy is huge. Just in Asia Pacific alone, I think the IT services is valued something like $2 trillion in USD. China is probably leading the pack because I think China's entire digital economy probably surpassed that in excess of about $3 trillion or $3.8 trillion. I think, again, this is huge. So what does that actually compute at the national level? It computes down to jobs. Jobs in which areas? In areas that will support and drive the digital economy. Areas of AI, areas of advanced robotics. Now think about the robotics that's going to be out there. The next volocopter that's going to be piloting in Singapore, who's going to be servicing those autonomous vehicles? Well, there will be new engineers that has to be reskilled to do that. Because the old guys who's going to be fixing your car in the chop shop isn't going to get it done, right? So we're talking about areas like data, cyber, that's mentioned a couple of times here, and many other areas. So I think fundamentally there needs to be a rethinking around, I think, education, a rethinking around businesses, right? Because there's basically two angles of it. There's the national level where countries are responsible to say, hey, the headcount that's going to be displaced by technology, where are these headcounts going to go? Because they have to be able to continue to increase the employment level of the people. Their wallets, their take-home income, and the amount of money that the breadwinner has to bring back to his family or her family. On the other side, there is the companies and the businesses, right? Companies and business will be displaced and affected by technology. Now think about very classic Harvard Business School case studies of Polaroid. So where is Polaroid today? I mean, it's a rhetorical question, but this is a very classic Harvard Business School that most of us would have seen. So I think there's basically slightly two angles of that, because these two angles will not necessarily align. Because if you're a company the way we are driven to bottom lines, we're driven on profits, we're driven on revenues, right? We'll automate that. But the countries and the national level, they are required to provide jobs for the people. Help them to do that, help them to succeed in the new digital economy that is happening right now. So slightly different conversations.
Yusuf, your turn.
Okay, thank you. Well, if we talk about technology development, we talk about what we will give to our next generation, what we will give to our son, our daughter, and maybe our grandson, our granddaughter. In my opinion, our life is technology. We not talk about AI, we not talk about blockchain yet, but our life is technology as a baby until we are getting old. Actually, I agree with what Ivan said. about the hard skill. Hard skill is very important in the near future. We talk about programming skill, we talk about technical skill, we talk about the analyzing skill. But back again, in my opinion, what is important aside that is soft skill. So we have to teach our next generation better moral and then better ethics. Maybe I don't know in another country, but in Indonesia, so many data fraud. So some technology company they have the customer data and silently sold the data to another company, and that's very unethical. So in my opinion, as Stacy said also, we have to focus to the process. We have to commit to the process. I cannot say the result will be good, but still we have to trust the process. Trust the process instead of hard skill. We have to teach our next generation, our technology development, about the moral, about the ethics. Thank you.
Basun?
If we divide this into two buckets, wherein one is people into technology and one is the ones which are not into technology. So keeping the first one, which is technology, if you see 40 years ago, people used to work on business machines and they used to work continuously for 20 years on that. They never changed their skills. And if you see in last 20 years, people would have probably worked, all of us would have worked on 10 to 12 or 15 different technologies. We keep changing every 6 months. So I think in coming future, people will keep on changing more frequently. Even we see today that some of our peers have left behind because they did not keep pace with the technology, wherein someone have gone top of the ladder because they learn new technology as soon as they come. So I would suggest that keep pace with the technology, keep on trying something in your spare time and figure out what's new. If you don't learn anything in next 3 to 6 months, it's time to change. That's what is important. And talking about the people who are not into technology, picking up from Debbie's example since I am into automobiles. So if you see earlier, before 2000, the mechanics never had an option of ECM, which is the computer in the car. So they used to just figure out the mechanics and they used to do it. But the same mechanics today, I'm seeing live, that they are capable of using the small tablets and computers to understand what is wrong in the car. They are not literate, especially in India. They're not literate, but they understand what this problem means and they're able to solve that problem. So tomorrow, once we have autonomous cars, they have their own problems, own set of problems. There will be some set of problems which they cannot solve, which would be in the firmware of the car, but there would be mechanical problems and diagnostic of those mechanical problems which they can solve. So they will also progress, they will learn. The ones who do not, they will obviously fail. Even I see today that if I divide those mechanics, 50% of them would have been doing only for basic cars, wherein the ones who changed are doing for premium cars and are making much more money. Thank you.
I think you touched upon one point, especially on the point that there are people who sort of reject or deny technologies. I have many friends who, and even at my age, refuse to use mobile. Somehow I think, and you cannot force them. And that is something they make decision and they'll be left behind. But there is one society that I think sort of induce the use of technology in everyday life, and that is China. I think if you go to China today, I think everybody know now, they don't use cash anymore. Everybody have a handheld mobile, and they use it for transaction, and even old people do that, Yeah. So if that is something necessary for their life, I think they have to learn. I don't know other society would be able to do that, the same thing. So let me pass on, please.
So I think we need to take a look at what technology, what kind of jobs technology can replace. And I think it seems obvious that it's going to be replacing all of the lower end jobs first, which, I mean, maybe is a good thing, right? Because who wants to be a cashier anyway? I think the two things that really won't be replaced, at least right now, will be all of the jobs that have to do with emotion. So all of the creative jobs, all of the communications jobs, all of those kind of jobs will remain at least for the time being. And then the other jobs will be the more complex jobs, in which case I think we come back to what Stacy was saying when we're talking about critical thinking, adaptability, all of that kind of stuff. And I think that's why you go to university. You go to university, yes, to go and study technology or communications or whatever it is, but what you're really buying when you're going there for 3 years is the ability to have acquire critical thinking. And I think that's probably what's the most important, because being able to have vision and being able to make strategic choices is not something that technology can do right now. And I think it's going to be difficult for these computers to be able to do it. I think you can, when you research something on Google, something that's a little bit complex, you see very quickly that Google, the algorithm, is not able to compute properly what it is you're asking of it. And I don't think that'll be changing, at least for the next 50 years. So I think we can focus on that, and 50 years from now, I'm sure we can reevaluate and figure out what the next generations will need. Thank you.
50 years is a short time now, because people are saying that the first child who will stay until 150 is already born. So they expect that next generation they will be able to live to 150. I don't know. Anyway, we move. Please, June, you can give us your how do you advise your youngster, what to do with the future?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. As I mentioned, my background is technology. I love technology, but at the same time, I would like to bring down and apply technology from a very pragmatic, practical perspective. And I mentioned a while ago that there's a big difference between Western technologies and Asian technologies or applications. But all of us here in Asia, we actually learn from what is invented and created from the West. What is invented and created in Silicon Valley and maybe in Seattle, in Europe, in Sweden, we learn a lot. Almost everything that we use here are actually coming from the Western world. So the point I would like to make, Mr. Chair, is that, and to everyone, is that all of us here in Asia should really immerse and understand and learn and maybe code, really use all of the technologies coming from the Western world. Understand it, really use it and learn from it, and maybe make a business out of it. Fail fast if that is needed, if that is the way that it will go. But the point is, use all of these available technologies as much as we can here in Asia, so that we know the limits, the limitations. We know how far we can apply the technology, whether it's practical for use, let's say robotics process automation now, or we wait 5 years down the road, and put that into context, or put that into the Asian context. Because I think that's very important. When we develop application solutions, it has to have that perfect fit with respect to the eventual users or clients, which is in our case, of course, is Asia. So we learn from the best from the Western world. We get the best technologies from them, and then we apply it for the Asian context, Mr. Chair, and fail as fast as you can. But hopefully not, not too much.
So I think there's another point that Stacy touched upon, this inequalities, especially with the emergence of AI. I think we will see a great disparity between countries who control AI and countries who are sort of are left behind. I read somewhere they said in today, there's no second chance if you don't start. In other words, there's no second. This is the last train. It's unlike the industrial era where you cannot. I mean, the country who start first, they need labor, so they have to transfer that to the other country to use their labor. But for AI, they don't need anything. They don't need human, and therefore this inequality will create, as I said before, the useless class. And so how people asked, how do these people live if they don't have job? They need to eat, they need money. So there's a proposal of what they call universal basic income, which means everybody is entitled to some kind of allowance in order to live. Yeah, and where this money come from the money made from the product produced by AI. So I would like the panel to give some opinion on this. Perhaps Stacy, you start first.
Sure. So I already stated my opinion that I think it's going to cause massive inequality problems and social disruption. I agree with you that AI, because it's not one technology, it's a confluence of a lot of technologies. It's not, you can't just have AI. It's not just software. It's not just hardware. It's lots of things that involve a lot of different disciplines, including advanced manufacturing to be able to make chips that can calculate the software that you're running your AI on. So it really hands an advantage to those economies that are already very advanced and already very large, where you have lots of data. So I think the problem is going to be really real. I've heard a lot about the discussion of universal basic income. I mean, I'm from the United States. It's not a popular topic there. I don't see that happening anytime soon. I mean, maybe it will ultimately, but in the shorter term, in the foreseeable future, and by that I mean my lifetime, because I'm probably not going to live to be 150, but I have a comment on that in a second. I think what we're going to see is that the folks that are have the advantage of having, learned those fundamentals, having critical thinking, having a bit of the ability to use AI as a tool, doing much better, a greater share of society's economic benefit ending up in a smaller portion of people, and a much greater portion of people getting progressively worse off. I know that's not a happy thought, but I mean, I think society will continue to provide for them, but at progressively lower levels, to the point where it becomes dangerous and socially disruptive. On your comment about for a child that's going to live 150 years being born today, it just struck me that the first flight was in 1903. That was only 115 years ago. So if you actually had a lifespan of 150 years, and you might think that you would work for maybe 100 years of that, just 2/3, there's no way you're going to be able to do that without completely relearning everything that you learned before, probably several times over. And hence, again, the emphasis on the adaptability and the ability to learn being the key skill set, not what you learn, but how to learn. Thank you.
I add, from what I said, there's even very wide imagination that if the majority of population in this earth is what they call useless class, then of course they receive this universal basic income in order to survive. By that, the government would not have any power over the population, and therefore all the border may eventually disappear. Yeah, just like the song Imagines.
I mean, in discussions groups, there's been, obviously you can go down some pretty dark dystopian paths on this, but one of the subjects I've actually heard brought up is that in order to get your universal basic income, in order to have the government support you, that essentially you give up your right to have children, which would result in reducing the problem fairly significantly over the course of one generation.
I'll just highlight a little bit on a slightly different conversation on micro entrepreneurship. I think we've seen the rise of that in the recent years. A lot of it is driven by technology. I think backtrack 5 years ago, that is 2013, right? If you go down the streets of Jakarta or Indonesia, you talk to the folks there, and you ask them what is the average income, right? I don't have the numbers off the top of my head. They could give you X number, X amount in rupiah, and you go back to the same people today, off the back of Gojeks and off the back of Grabs of the world. Now we've seen the income improved through micro entrepreneurship. Now they are not going to be, or probably will not be, the next unicorn entrepreneurs, that's macro or investable companies, but they are really micro entrepreneurship. They could be single moms. They could be someone with an average or slightly below average opportunity of education, but because of technology, because of the Gojeks and the Grabs, they're able to make an income through technology. I mean, just to give it a different, slightly different perspective on how there are people, masses who has benefited off that. Everything from selling cupcakes to providing haircuts to being the Grab bike drivers, even right here in Vietnam. We've seen that. So that's just take it a slightly different sort of area.
We have about 15 minutes left. I would like to open this to everybody here in this room. Anybody want to address any point that we have discussed, or would like to ask any questions? Please, the floor is yours. Anybody? Yeah, please.
If I may, I sit on a number of boards and a number of committees, and one of the most important things that we keep discussing now is cybersecurity. It's taken us quite a while to bring people around to realize that that actually it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. And so I'm very interested in what Ivan was talking about in terms of cybersecurity. One of the things that we have been doing, and it has been rather difficult to get people to accept this, is to not use your own internal IT who think that they've got so much covered, but to actually use external providers to go out and actually hack your system and then find out what are the holes in the system and see what you can do. Of course, that doesn't mean that you've rectified everything, because that's only going to do something for the moment, and again in future there'll be more holes to cover for sure. But I'd be very interested to hear some more from Ivan about what he's seeing in terms of corporations coming to him with their cybersecurity issues. Thanks.
Could I? Okay. Well, in general, customers are terrible. All customers are horrible. They are living nightmare. Doesn't matter who they are. It's harder to educate them than to educate the kids actually. What you are saying is actually one area of cybersecurity called pen testing. Pen testing addresses a very specific area in cybersecurity, fundamentally in web applications that the organizations may host that is forward-facing, public-facing. Yeah, it depends on what scale and size of the customer that you speak to. If you speak to the largest of the banks, Standard Chartered Bank, for instance, they probably have about, if I recall the numbers, anything between 70 to 100 pen testers in-house. And that makes it pointless to actually outsource that capability. However, Standard Chartered Bank is only one bank, and you have a million other organizations out there that probably have only one guy running the whole entire IT department. Like, for example, many of the e-commerce startups here, a lot of them are struggling with pen testing requirements. Actually, on my side of things, I see customers outsourcing more than insourcing. It's a very different experience that you're getting. Because of that, actually pen testing is becoming a commodity. And in some countries, pen testing becomes a checklist item to do, and they don't actually understand the value of that anymore. So my experience is actually pretty different from what you're experiencing. However, in cybersecurity, you then have many other spectrum, because we're only covering web applications. And then you have operating system vulnerabilities, application vulnerabilities that are non-web centric, insider threat management, all kinds of other stuff. These are the challenges that we face when we talk to our customers, getting them to explore things that they are not familiar with today. Cyber is very much like the insurance industry. When they don't get struck, they don't panic. The moment they get an incident, they will come rushing to you and hope that you can do magic. So I have customers who got ransomware. I'm sure you guys are aware of that. They've got their computers encrypted, and then they come to Ivan and ask Ivan to decrypt the damn thing. Ivan is asking them to buy the software so you don't get encrypted to begin with. So in the specific use case of pen testing, I actually see more customers outsourcing than insourcing, because hiring pen testers are very expensive, and they typically do not stay loyal to the company. But on other spectrums of cyber security spending, yes, it's pretty much what you're saying. I hope that makes sense. Yeah. Don't hate me if any customers are right here.
Hi, I'm Pete. I'm a digital entrepreneur. As a background, I am in media, in e-commerce, and in HR technology. One of my companies was voted top 25 AI companies in the APAC region. And I've got two questions. The first question is, I think the last changes of revolution, right? So the first revolution was the Industrial Revolution, with machinery and industrialization. The second revolution was probably the Internet Revolution, which democratized communications, right, and sort of flattened the world. I think the third big disruption is actually AI, where the real disruption is, so industrial automation is mechanical stuff, right? Communications was disrupting, probably flattening the world, right? The third one, which is AI, is actually disrupting thinking. And looking at a lot of deep AI technologies, whether it be structured data AI or even deep learning from Watson and DeepMind, right? Anything that can be observed today actually can be built. So again, computer programmers, I think personally in 10 years there won't be a need for computer programmers. AI will do computer programming by people just telling them what to do, right? And I'm personally working on AI. I'm very frightened and very guilty as well, because I think that's the real disruption, right? And again, to what Anand said, I think the future is going to be really understanding people's soft skills and emotions and all that. But the question, working with a lot of people, right, is every human able to do that? Is every human able to have critical thinking, right? And really, what's that future? So that's my first question to the panel, right? What is that future, right? The second question is, who's going to own that future? So again, building AI, it's been extremely difficult, extremely expensive, extremely difficult. Data scientists are crazy, right? And today it's not just data scientists, it's bringing PhDs from different fields to work with data scientists and all that. It's really expensive. And having said that, I think there are a lot of companies who are working on AI in vertical spaces. And I actually see the future as the large corporations buying up verticals of AI to merge them to own the largest piece of AI, right? And if you look at the worlds of the Amazons, of the Apples, of the Alibabas, right? It's insane. They've got all data. They've got data on consumers, where you live, how you think, what you're interested in buying, logistics, everything, right? And they own the consumer as well because they're the destination, right? What is the future for us? Not being one of those, right? So again, my two questions to the panel.
So your question is whether human can be disrupted. Do we need humans?
Who's going to own it?
Eventually.
The large corporation.
So any panelists would like to reply to this question? What is the future?
Yes, my position on AI is a little bit different. I don't think even for the next 10, 20 years, it would be that intelligent to replace humans. And the basis for why I'm saying it is because if we look at how we are storing data now, it's, I would say, a little bit still primitive. We've heard before of network, hierarchical, relational databases and all that. Now, of course, we have SQL-based databases, we have NoSQL, and we have like column-based data warehousing and so on. And that is combined with file system-based storage like Dropbox and all the other ways of storing data. But I think it's still primitive for real intelligence to be able to process huge amount of data. Specifically, for example, if you use Redshift, which is hosted in AWS as a way to store data, it's column-oriented and so on. But still, I think there's a huge improvement that has to be done on how we store data, whether it's structured data like name, address, or unstructured data like voice, video, and so on. I think there's really, there should be like a big invention or a big way of storing all of this data so that real artificial intelligence could process all of this huge data for us to be able to create real intelligence out of, you know, this huge data that we are now accumulating. So I think the foundation is not yet there, and I think AI itself to be really effective and intelligent compared to how the human brain works is really like maybe even 30 years away. That is my personal.
So unfortunately, I don't agree, right? I'm a small, tiny company, and on a monthly basis for media, I collect 300 billion points of data in a month.
Wow.
Right?
That's huge.
A month.
Yes.
Right? Yes. And I think if you look at quantum computing, and I've seen a bit of those, it's insane. I mean, the way it works. So I actually don't agree.
Maybe that's the next step. I mean, once quantum computer is there, wherein you're not dependent on the bits and bytes and so on, I think that's where the real revolution and AI will kick in.
Yes.
I totally agree on that. Yeah.
June, according to Ray Kurzweil, I think you know him, famous futurist. He expects that in 2029, the AI will have equal intelligence as one human, and of course, but he himself is not clear whether that includes consciousness or just a basic kind of intelligence. Yeah. But I think his prediction is proved to be accurate, but 86%.
Actually, the qualification is your handphone will be the equivalent to the processing speed of your mind in that time. not all computing. Equivalent. It's your handphone.
Okay. If I may comment based on what he said, because the major limitation of our current technology is binary, 1 zeros. But when we do quantum computing, that will really revolutionize everything. Right. That's why I'm not confident that with binary technology, bits and bytes, 1 zeros, I don't think we will go into real AI. unless a major revolution or change like quantum computing comes in.
Well, I think we only have 3 minutes left. I would ask each of these panelists to say very briefly what some kind of takeaway that you would like to give, starting from Stacy.
Okay, just to leave everyone with a thought, I do a fair amount of work with a company called Project X, which is a part of Google. And if you were going to build a perfect AI, you would want a lot of data sources. So for example, you might want to equip, hundreds of millions of people with a tracking device that knows their location, the weather, that gathers everything that you need. You might want to put a speaker in their home called Echo that records what's happening at home. You might want to look at all their communications, which is their email, which they'll give you for free, so that they can look at your interactions with one another. They might want to look at all your documents, so they'll store it for you for free. And you might want to process all this. You might, to do all this, have millions of servers at your disposal. And you mentioned quantum computing. The largest customer of D-Wave, which is really the only functional quantum computer at the moment, at least in production, is Google. So there are already entities that have all the data gathering resources, autonomous cars with Waymo, drones, even wearable devices such as contact lenses that measure your blood sugar level. All of these are funded by Google. They're all existing now. That's not telling you about the things that they're not telling you about, which are definitely in existence. So that's a fun takeaway.
Scary takeaway.
Hi. Sure. So there's a lot of talks on AI from a computer science perspective. Just so you guys know, the fundamentals of AI hasn't changed since 60s or 70s. Neural networks, programming structures, paradigms, nothing has changed. Okay. What has changed is only infrastructure and the ability to process data faster. So if 50 years ago terminators are not available, why would it be 50 years from now? Because the same programming language is still there. This is just my last point.
I would probably say that we are living in the time and the space of Boston Dynamics and Elon Musk's Hyperloop. That is already here. And take a look at what Google has done with Duplex, which is amazing, NLP. So the digital economy, the digital disruption, the industrial transformation 4.0 is already here. It's about what we want to do with it and how we choose to tackle that and how we create a new future out of that. So that's my sort of sign-off line.
Just a quick comment. Google owned Boston Dynamics for a long time before selling it recently.
Okay, my point is, as what Albert Einstein said, human spirit must prevail over the technology. So what I mean is, as a human being, whether in the government area or private sector or public sector, we have to commit to build the better generation in the future. So whether it's AI, blockchain, or whatever it is, whatever the model of the technology, we as a human being have to be very committed to build a better generation. Because in my opinion, technology never do harm things, but human do. Thank you.
We are currently at 2 qubits quantum computers, and to replace humans we need at least 16 qubits. So it's a long time, so we should rather look at the current next 20 or 30 years and work on those technologies, collaborate, learn more, and to be relevant now rather than worrying about future. That's what I would say, because even now if we are not looking at current pace, we would be irrelevant in near future. So let's not talk about 100 years from now, rather 20 to 50 years from now. Thank you.
Right now, data is owned by all of these big companies like Google and Amazon and so many of these different companies. But it doesn't have to be. Thanks to blockchain technology, we're able to create a more transparent internet, an internet where you can own your own data And so that's where I'm really excited to be working in the blockchain industry, because if we want, we can create Internet 3.0, and we can all own our own data, and we can make sure that Google and Amazon and all of the big Chinese internet counterparts as well don't own us and don't own our data. Thank you.
Thank you very much for having me, Mr. Chair, and I really enjoyed our discussion. I also learned a lot from our friends and our colleagues. I think it's really a very exciting period, for all of us who are into technology, because there's really a lot of changes, a lot of new things that are coming out that will create and revolutionize how we do things as human beings. So it's just really exciting, and I think just like what I said a while ago, really let's immerse ourselves, let's use as much as we can all the technologies that are coming out, and learn what is doable, what is possible, what is applicable for the Asian context from our perspective.
Thank you. To end this session, I would like to thank all the audience, for your interest, and hopefully this will give you some ideas how to make the world better with technologies. And I would like to thank all of us to thank our panelists who provide us with a lot of valuable comments. Thank you.